Making headlines for this week of September 25th. Into the lion's den. Pope Francis brings environmental message to U.S. and to UN. Pool of pledges. EU leaders full of words to solve refugee problem but fall short on real action. Market signals. 10 global stock markets highlighting potential unfolding shift of financial paradigm. And a wave of change. Incoming energies offer an opportunity for growth for those who choose it.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. It seems we are at another wonderful evolutionary moment for humanity to make some very clear choices about how they are choosing to individually and collectively co-create the future that most are claiming to want to experience. This week's newscast is going to be a bit different from many other over the past few months because I'm going to go back into the realm of the esoteric for parts of the newscast. There will be those who will not fully agree, and I gently ask them to disregard anything that has no meaning for any individual on any level. There is a lot of seemingly hypocritical actions and statements taking place among leaders, some believed to be good, and also among those whom are perceived to be bad. From the perspective of those connected to the global cabal, the idea is to get people so completely messed up that they will not know who to trust, and thus, therefore, more likely to be susceptible to almost any message that comes their way. As long as one continues to react to every little thing that the media is putting out, they are proving just how easily people can be manipulated. On the other hand, the good news to all this confusion is that it is pointing people towards an answer that is visible, but people may have been unwilling or unable to see and accept it because we have been conditioned to dismiss the wisdom contained within the self and the knowledge of who we truly are. We are moving beyond the need for impulsive reactions to judge anything or anyone as good, bad, right, or wrong. In tonight's final words, I will share with you a lesson I gained this week about my own perceptions and judgments. This week, amidst the continued distractions of U.S. nuclear arms in Germany, the alleged refugee crisis, the alleged continued bombings in Syria, as well as the fading interest in the rising up of the Greek people and the destruction of Ukraine and its people, the eyes of the world are now focused upon the U.S., the United Nations, and several key addresses given by Pope Francis. First to the joint U.S. Congress on the 24th, and then to the UN General Assembly on the 25th, alongside other global leaders. Mix in with this a number of different celestial, astronomic, and energetic events, and we have a potential powder keg to unfold before our very eyes. As always, the lesson we continue to learn is to begin looking for the real stories when the media is flashing some other distraction in the faces of the public. From the moment of the arrival of Pope Francis to Washington on September 22nd, there was the pomp and ceremony of the arrival. An article appearing on London's Daily Mail website on the 22nd captured a bit of this ironic hypocrisy, but the photos also captured another oddity that I will address in a moment. True to the form that he has established for himself, the Pope traveled amidst a motorcade of large, heavily protected vehicles while traveling himself in a very small Fiat car from Italy. The article highlighted all the technology in just the presidential vehicle, and then the article noted the following. The U.S. presidential car, worth over $1 million, is 18 feet in length, weighs 8 tons, and has 8 inches thick of armor plating on its doors, and even boasts its own oxygen supply in case of chemical attack and puncture-resistant run-flat tires reinforced with Kevlar. It also features a panic button and an armored and insulated fuel tank to prevent it from exploding even if it suffers a direct hit. By comparison, Pope Francis's tiny Fiat 500, which is just 11 feet 7 inches long and costs less than $20,000. His simple Fiat is a reflection on Francis's stand on consumerism and aims to focus less on material goods and more on the poor. The economical car may be seen as a message on climate change, which will be the focus of his speech before the United Nations, where he is expected to implore the General Assembly to take much more aggressive steps to curb greenhouse gas emissions. In showing pictures comparing the vehicles used by Obama and the visiting pontiff, the article also captured a photo of Obama's vehicle, and a glaring oddity is noticed immediately upon looking at the front of the vehicle. There are 2 flags on the front of the car, and although by itself this might not seem odd, because people might assume that the flags are the U.S. flags. The flag on the driver's side of the car, however, was not just a flag, but an Israeli flag, and a gold-rimmed Israeli flag at that. According to Wikipedia, and I am the first to acknowledge that Wikipedia is not always the most accurate source for information, there is a protocol when it comes to flags. The website identifies the following as a protocol for flags on vehicles. On a vehicle, the flag should be put on a window or affixed securely to the front of the chassis on the near side of the vehicle, meaning the one opposite the driver. In other words, in countries that drive on the right-hand side of the road, the flag is on the right of the vehicle. On a vehicle where a visiting head of state or government is sharing a car with the host head of state or government, the host's flag takes the near side position. The guest's flag is on the off side. The curious thing to note are the words visiting head of state or government is sharing a car. It is known that Obama and Israeli PM Netanyahu are not fond of each other, so even if Netanyahu had been in Washington that day, the chances of them sharing a car ride together would be pretty much zero. The question must be asked, therefore, why, during an official visit from the head of a sovereign city-state of the Vatican to the sovereign city-state of Washington, D.C., why is an Israeli flag given the prominence as sharing the presidential vehicle with the President of the U.S.? Of course, for most listeners, the influence and control that Netanyahu, the Israeli government, and Israeli lobby group wield over the U.S. Congress and Senate is well known, although it will surely come as a surprise to other listeners, and most certainly to the general public. However, this is not likely a question that we will get an answer to anytime in the very near future. With more on the story of the papal visit to Washington, here's John Sopel of the BBC.
So many firsts on this trip, but surely the first time so much pomp and circumstance for someone arriving at the White House in a Fiat 500. But this is Pope Francis, and he does things his way. And in the early autumn sun, he was given the warmest of welcomes by the President.
I believe the excitement around your visit, Holy Father, must be attributed not only to your role as Pope, but to your unique qualities as a person.
But this wasn't just platitudes. There were difficult policy issues touched on that are highly controversial in America.
We support your call to all world leaders to support the communities most vulnerable to changing climates, come together to preserve our precious world for future generations.
And the Pope spoke of the challenge too.
It seems clear to me also that climate change is a problem we can no longer be left to a future generation.
The two then had private talks. Many conservatives here will find the Pope's message hard to swallow, but the President hailed him as a moral force, shaking us out of our complacency. John Sokol, BBC News, Washington.
On the 24th, the Pope made history with an address to a joint session of Congress, the first ever by a sitting Pope. In a posting appearing on the usnews.com website, the text of the address made by Francis was shared. Among some of the comments made by Francis were the following. A political society endures when it seeks, as a vocation, to satisfy common needs by stimulating the growth of all its members, especially those in situations of greater vulnerability or risk. Legislative activity is always based on care for the people. To this, you have been invited, called, and convened by those who elected you. All of us are quite aware of and deeply worried by the disturbing social and political situation of the world today. Our world is increasingly a place of violent conflict, hatred, and brutal atrocities committed even in the name of God and of religion. We know that no religion is immune from forms of individual delusion or ideological extremism. We know that in the attempt to be freed of the enemy without, we can be tempted to feed the enemy within. To imitate the hatred and violence of tyrants and murderers is the best way to take their place. Our response must instead be one of hope and healing, of peace and justice. We are asked to summon the courage and the intelligence to resolve today's many geopolitical and economic crises. Even in the developed world, the effects of unjust structures and actions are all too apparent. Our efforts must aim at restoring hope, righting wrongs, maintaining commitments, and thus promoting the well-being of individuals and of peoples. We must move forward together, as one, in a renewed spirit of fraternity and solidarity, cooperating generously for the common good. Let us remember the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This rule points us in a clear direction. Let us treat others with the same passion and compassion with which we want to be treated. Let us seek for others the same possibilities which we seek for ourselves. Let us help others to grow as we would like to be helped ourselves. In a word, if we want security, let us give security. If we want life, let us give life. If we want opportunities, let us provide opportunities. The yardstick we use for others will be the yardstick which time will use for us. The Golden Rule also reminds us of our responsibility to protect and defend human life at every stage of development. It goes without saying that part of this great effort is the creation and distribution of wealth, the right use of natural resources, the proper application of technology, and the harnessing of the spirit of enterprise are essential elements of an economy which seeks to be modern, inclusive, and sustainable. This common good also includes the earth, a central theme of the encyclical which I recently wrote in order to enter into dialogue with all people about our common home. We need a conversation which includes everyone, since the environmental challenge we are undergoing and its human roots concern and affect us all. After the address, the Pontiff declined lunch with parliamentarians to honor a commitment to serve and have lunch with some of Washington's homeless at St. Patrick's Cathedral. A link will be posted in the show summary from ABC News covering the arrival of the Pope to this particular event. In a late addition to this story on the 25th, following the Pope's address to the UN General Assembly, Susan Goldenberg and Stephanie Kirschgessner of the London Guardian reported the following. Pope Francis asserted that the environment, as well as humanity, has rights in a dramatic rethinking of the relationship between people and the earth at the United Nations on Friday. Francis told the UN General Assembly that the environment should enjoy the same rights and protections as humanity. It must be stated that a true right of the environment does exist, Francis said. The declaration gives nature far greater primacy in Catholic Church thinking than before, deepening the traditional responsibility of humans to serve as stewards of the environment. The justification, the Pope said, was clear. Humanity and nature were so interconnected that threats to the environment inevitably rebounded. diminishing the rights and living conditions of the most vulnerable in society. Any harm done to the environment, therefore, is done to humanity, the Pope concluded. It was the first time Francis had explicitly said that the environment had a right that equated it to humanity. The Pope was quoted as saying that the misuse and destruction of the environment are also accompanied by a relentless process of exclusion. A selfish and boundless thirst for power and material prosperity leads both to a misuse of available natural resources and to the exclusion of the weak and disadvantaged, either because they are differently abled or because they lack adequate information and technical expertise or are incapable of decisive political action, Francis told the UN. In July, a 180-page papal encyclical paper was released by Francis outlining his thinking on the environment and the rights of individuals, the poor, and of future generations, but at that time did not mention the earth herself. Francis, according to the article, appears to be saying that the environment is more than a necessary tool for survival. It is, in fact, one with humanity, and therefore in possession of a right. At the conclusion of his 40-minute speech, he said, "This common home of all men and women must also be built on the understanding of a certain sacredness of created nature." It was a good show, an interaction between church and state attempting to show the people that leaders can still be an honorable example of a moral compass for the people. What is not exactly clear, however, is whether or not the people are accepting completely all that is coming from leaders. It still comes down to being the example of that which one is claiming to want to see in the world. It will be up to the people of the world to scrutinize the document that is presented as Agenda 2030 at the UN. Some people are saying that it is a document that will seal the fate of humanity against the dominion of the global cabal, and others are saying that it will be a watershed agreement that finally brings countries into alignment with a harmonized vision for the collective good. Which one do you want it to be? What are you prepared to choose? We must focus on that which we are seeking to create and experience and hold and anchor those energies for the highest good of all. Although Francis is demonstrating through concrete examples a message to create a better world, there are still at least 2 or 3 other examples from Francis that will demonstrate perhaps more than any other the truth of his words. One would be the release of the vast amounts of wealth owned and controlled by the Vatican. A second would be the release of the vast amounts of information that have been hidden away in Vatican archives. A third would be the ending of the criminal systems of debt-based banking and commercial admiralty law that have been imposed upon sovereign humans without their informed consent. These, more than anything, in my mind personally, would begin to convince me once and for all that Francis is truly genuine and walking his example for the world. In other geopolitical news, as Pope Francis was leaving Washington after his visit, Chinese President Xi Jinping was arriving for his visit with President Obama. Euronews was reporting on the morning of the 25th that both the Chinese and U.S. leaders were planning on making a joint climate announcement ahead of a major global climate summit in Paris later this year. According to the United Nations news website on the 24th, world leaders, heads of global financial institutions, and other dignitaries are heading to New York, where, after months of intense negotiations, the United Nations is set to launch a landmark new framework for sustainable development that will aim to end poverty and build a life of dignity for all, leaving no one behind. The UN's top development officials are keenly focused and enthusiastically preparing for the moment Friday afternoon when the organization's 193 member states formally adopt the new framework, Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, composed of 17 goals and 169 targets to wipe out poverty, fight inequality, and tackle climate over the next 15 years. The article continues. The UN Deputy Secretary General Jan Eliasson has said, people have the right to have expectations because there is a need to make sure that the former goals, the Millennium Development Goals, are truly achieved. As part of my master's thesis for peace education, I had written on numerous documents created by politicians and bureaucrats claiming great things for the world, and the Millennium Development Goals document was among them. Sadly, leaders demonstrate time and time again that they are big on words and big on spending money, but they do not even come up to the starting line when it comes to being the examples of their big words. Documents are created and they are flashed out across the press and the people of the world cheer. And then the document is relocated to the archives to be basically forgotten, while those who have profited from not following those documents laugh at the ignorance and complacency of the mainstream populations. I acknowledge that it does not sound like a very positive affirmation in this institution, and to a degree there is truth to this. I have wanted to believe in the good faith and integrity of leaders and institutions tied to the UN, and unfortunately, my experience at the UN-mandated University for Peace and my research of UN institutions and documents has not given me great confidence. I continue to do my best to focus and hold the energies for positive change among leaders and institutions, however, but to do that, I must also be willing to see and acknowledge what has not been working and why up to now. This is not to say that there are not governments and countries making some attempts to honor the environment. Given the focus on the environment, perhaps more countries may be attempting to jump to the forefront of the environmental movement. Last week, CVN reported on a group of celebrities and high-profile Canadians led by Naomi Klein in introducing the LEAP Manifesto, a document that lays out a strategy for moving Canada in a more environmentally friendly and sustainable direction. This week, Sweden seems to be in the spotlight. An article appearing on the ScienceAlert.com website on September 25th by Fiona MacDonald reports that the Swedish government announced this week that they will be spending an extra $546 million on renewable energy and climate change action in their 2016 budget, with the aim of becoming among the world's first nations to end its dependence on fossil fuels. MacDonald adds that it may seem like a pretty big task, but the Scandinavian country already gets 2/3 of its electricity from non-fossil fuel energy sources, predominantly hydroelectric and nuclear, and it will now be focusing on increasing its solar and wind energy potential, as well as making its transport industry more sustainable. The majority of the budget increase will be financed through heavier taxes on petrol and diesel fuels. Solar energy was one of the big winners in the Swedish budget, although the article adds that the money would also be allocated for smart grids, renewable energy storage technology, an electric bus fleet, subsidies for green cars, climate adaptation strategies, and renovating residential buildings for improved energy efficiency. In a press briefing, an advisor to Prime Minister Stefan Löfven, Johan Rockström, was quoted as saying that 2015 is our opportunity, a chance to, in dialogue with all countries of the world, change course towards a new development path where we can succeed in generating welfare for all, not at the planet's cost, but in cooperation with it. Like most other countries, Sweden is also heavily controlled by the global cabal and has often been a puppet to the United States, albeit under a different political experiment within the social democracy umbrella. Small steps are great, but in a world requiring more urgent attention, it is the actions of government to take out the root cause of all the problems, as opposed to merely implementing band-aid solutions that will gain my greatest respect. Sweden may have some competition, as countries like Germany and Denmark have already made significant strides in moving their national infrastructure towards alternative sources of energy. Taking a look at the continuing alleged crisis being blamed on Syria at the moment, we have the latest news before airtime coming from Euronews.
European leaders ended their emergency summit in Brussels, claiming to have put feuding over migrant quotas behind them. The talk was more of pulling together. The main result has been a pledge of at least €1 billion for Syrians displaced into refugee camps in Jordan, Lebanon and Turkey, and more help for those host countries. It's a push to ease factors driving the migrants to Europe in the first place. But the EU Council's president said more.
It's clear that the greatest tide of refugees and migrants is yet to come. Therefore, we need to correct the policy of open doors and windows. Now the focus should be on the proper protection of our external borders and on external assistance to refugees and the countries in our neighborhood.
That will come as music to the ears of Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who's been severely criticised for building a razor fence to keep migrants out. If we let the fence work, then we'll be able to control the natural borders and the migration inside the Schengen zone. But if they don't like the fence, we are also able to let migrants across into Austria and Germany.
Képesek vagyunk arra is, hogy átengedjük a migránsokat Ausztria és Németország irányába.
Our reporter in Brussels says,
bár az uniós csúcs záró dokumentumában nincsenek nagy meglepetések.
Although there were no surprise proposals from the EU summit, there was substantial debate behind the scenes about the direction of the bloc's migration policy. One diplomat said, Europe cannot offer open doors and put up fences for migrants at the same time.
The article speaks of leaders coming together in unity and speaks to barricades being put up on the borders. The story also notes that money will be going to aid agencies on the front lines. As we have been seeing time and time again, aid money is rarely making it to the front lines where it will help those most affected. Aid agencies have become equally as corrupted and have been padding their own pockets and paying higher executive salaries while only claiming to be doing honest work. Charities have become a network for funneling more taxpayer money out of the hands of the people and into the hands of the wealthier elites under the illusion of helping humanity. I will not say that this is the case for all charities, but if I was a betting man, the honest charities would be the ones that most people have not heard about and are quietly doing their work without stepping on the toes of the bigger agencies with the bigger advertising budgets and bigger management teams. It is hard to see the hypocrisy when governments and media are constantly hyping specific messages and then other actions are not given any coverage or mention at all. The questions I have are these. How much has it cost countries to put up border barricades, pay for policing or military, or pay to send their leaders for quote-unquote emergency meetings? Why cannot leaders just simply expose the global cabal, pull out of NATO, shut down the bombings and acts of aggressions in all the quote-unquote problem countries, and divert some of these resources to rebuilding communities for people to live in? People of Western countries cannot continue to be led along like sheep, being taken advantage of while being kept so enslaved and so much in debt that they do not have the time or energy to learn about how their hard-earned money has been abused, wasted, or outrightly stolen by people claiming to be doing honorable work for humanity and our planet. It is time to acknowledge the problem, but also to empower people with the solution. If people are unable or unwilling to push for global change, push for inner change, and then push for change within one's community that will make the community more self-sustaining without being dependent upon those who are controlling national infrastructure projects for power and profit. Is there an acknowledged U.S. strategy with respect to Syria? Larry Wilkerson, a former chief of staff to former Secretary of State Colin Powell, has told the Real News Network that he does not believe so, but at the same time he hopes, based on what he is hearing, that the U.S. secretly wants Russia involved in the Syrian crisis to perhaps take down ISIS. The following are excerpts from this interview.
What possibly could be happening is this. First of all, the administration confronted enormous challenges here because one of its principal allies, Saudi Arabia, and other members of the Gulf Cooperation Council are actually supporting and funding some of the most radical elements in Syria. So you've got that challenge at the beginning. You also have a NATO member, Turkey, and the leader of that NATO member, Erdogan, vigorously pursuing a policy vis-a-vis Syria that is antithetical to U.S. interests and to the interests of Syria as a state, if it can still be called a state. So you have some enormous challenges, and I didn't even talk about Iran and Hezbollah, the most effective fighting instruments as I see it in Syria right now, and mostly working for Assad. At the same time, they're fighting similar elements of Daesh, ISIL, ISIS, whatever you want to call them, that are in Iraq, realizing that the core element within ISIS, ISIL, Daesh, are the Sunnis we disenfranchised, disempowered in Iraq, and forced to go on the battlefield again. This is a very complicated situation. I think what I would like to see happening right now, and I do hope the administration is secretly doing this, much the way it started out the secret negotiations with Iran, we're dealing with Moscow and with Ankara and Tehran on the basis of, okay, what can we do, each of us, that won't look like it's coordinated, at least not initially, until we achieve success, that will achieve an interim political solution, and we all admit Assad has to stay around, at least for a time, for that interim political solution. We want to stop the killing. We want to stop the now increasingly destabilization of some key allies by all these refugees that are heading out of Syria. We want to get the situation under control, stabilize it, and somehow turn it around so it's more positive.
So you're sort of suggesting that perhaps there might even be tacit approval of the Russians increasing support for Assad, but rhetorically, especially for domestic public opinion because of the Republican position, the Obama administration has to sound critical of it.
Yes, in the back of your mind, if you're President Obama and John Kerry and Ash Carter, you're thinking, well, now, if the Russians put naval infantry and helicopters and tanks and so forth in Syria, they don't have them to put in Ukraine and the Baltic states and other places where they might be a little more inimical to our interests. This is crafty stuff if it's happening the way I hope it's happening.
The Republican debate and the rhetoric coming out of the Republican candidates more or less has Russia as the number one foreign policy enemy of the United States, actually more than ISIS or anything else. How much do you think this is rhetoric, and how much do you think if these people actually were in the White House, they would actually take action on this Russian front?
Well, you've got to have a bugaboo. If you're a Republican and your national security bona fides are in question for the first time in 30-plus years, you definitely got to have a bugaboo. You throw out China, you throw out Russia, you throw out ISIS, you throw out everything you can possibly throw out. And that gets people scared. It gets your base all worked up. You exploit this politics of fear, which is a very powerful force, and you get more votes that way. Are there people in the Congress who really think that Russia is an enemy? Of course there are, because they haven't left the Cold War. They're still in the Cold War. They'd like nothing better than to have Russia loom back and be a big enemy again. They love enemies. Everyone in the world would be our enemy if they had their way, because that way they could get their money that they need for the armed forces. They could get the money they need for all the programs they want to support that relate to national security. It's that crazy, Paul. It truly is that crazy. That's what happens when you become a national security state. When war and the trappings of war become your reason for existence as a national entity.
Is there perhaps something going on at a higher level that has not yet been revealed? As always, it seems the coming moments of now will reveal this. In a late developing story on the 25th, just ahead of airtime, reports are being made public now that Republican Speaker of the U.S. House, John Boehner, will be resigning as Speaker and also resigning from Congress at the end of October. Whether or not this is an indication that he knows something else is going to happen remains to be seen, but the timing is hugely significant in that it comes immediately following the visit of the Pope and also during a visit by Chinese leader Xi Jinping. According to ABC News in the U.S., in an article on the 25th, the announcement was shared with members of the Republican caucus this morning, one day after a historic visit of Pope Francis to Capitol Hill, which Boehner helped facilitate. Boehner has been under pressure from the right wing of his party as the coming battle over government funding heats up. Some lawmakers have mounted a challenge to unseat him from his leadership post. Speaker Boehner believes that the first job of any speaker is to protect this institution, and, as we saw yesterday with the Holy Father, it is the one thing that unites and inspires us all, an aide to Boehner told ABC News. The Speaker believes putting members through prolonged leadership turmoil would do irreparable damage to the institution. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat from California, called the announcement of Boehner's resignation seismic at a news conference today. The resignation of the Speaker is a stark indication of the disarray of the House Republicans, said Pelosi, who served as House Speaker before turning the gavel over to Boehner in 2011. With all due respect to the Speaker and his announcement, we still have to stop the government from shutting down. Jennifer Steinhauer, writing for the New York Times, offered that most recently Boehner was trying to craft a solution to keep the government open through the rest of the year, but was under pressure from a growing base of conservatives who told him that they would not vote for a bill that did not defund Planned Parenthood. Several of those members were on a path to remove Mr. Boehner as Speaker, though their ability to do so was far from certain. Pennsylvania Republican Charlie Dent was quoted as saying that the next Speaker is going to have a very tough job. The fundamental dynamics have not changed. I am going to offer a thought for consideration here for people living in the U.S. As I am not wholly familiar with the U.S. style of politics, I have to ask myself why Boehner chose this moment in the midst of two high-level state visits, amidst the possible shutdown once again of the U.S. government, and amidst some of the greatest financial turmoil or transformation. In the midst of the spectacle of this announcement, keep your eyes open for stories that may now be hidden underneath. I'm not saying it is, but I am merely suggesting to not rule anything out at this time. More details will be unfolding as we approach next week's deadline to see what is going to happen within the U.S. government this time around. In financial news, we might find another possible hint as to why John Boehner has suddenly resigned. An article appearing on the Zero Hedge website, submitted by Tyler Durden on September 25th, has highlighted the unfolding drama in the geoeconomic arena. The article reports that you would think that the simultaneous crashing of all the largest stock markets around the world would be very big news, but so far the mainstream media in the United States is treating it like it isn't really a big deal. Over the last 60 days, we have witnessed the most significant global stock market decline since the fall of 2008, and yet most people still seem to think that this is just a temporary bump in the road, and that the bull market will soon resume. Right now, stock market wealth is being wiped out all over the planet, and none of the largest global economies have been exempt from this. When it is a single market, there may be a certain factor to consider, or perhaps multiple factors to consider. However, given that this is affecting numerous large global markets, one has to wonder if this is the final takedown of the old system so that a new system can finally be brought online. The following outlines activities in the 10 largest markets recently. Number 1. The United States, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is down more than 2,000 points since the peak of the market. Number 2. China, the Shanghai Composite Index has plummeted nearly 40% since hitting a peak earlier this year. Number 3, Japan. The Nikkei has experienced extremely violent moves recently, and it is now down more than 3,000 points from the peak that was hit earlier in 2015. The Japanese economy and the Japanese financial system are both basket cases at this point, and it isn't going to take much to push Japan into a full-blown financial collapse. Number 4, Germany. Almost 1/4 of the value of German stocks has already been wiped out, and this crash threatens to get much worse. The Volkswagen emissions scandal is making headlines all over the globe, and don't forget to watch for massive trouble at Germany's biggest bank. Number 5, the United Kingdom. British stocks are down about 16% from the peak of the market, and the UK economy is definitely on shaky ground. Number 6, France. French stocks have declined nearly 18%, and it has become exceedingly apparent that France is on the exact same path that Greece has already gone down. Number 7, Brazil. Brazil is the epicenter of the South American financial crisis of 2015. Stocks in Brazil have plunged more than 12,000 points since the peak, and the nation has already officially entered a new recession. Number 8, Italy. Watch Italy. Italian stocks are already down 15%, and look for the Italian economy to make very big headlines in the months ahead. Number 9, India. Stocks in India have now dropped close to 4,000 points, and analysts are deeply concerned about this major exporting nation as global trade continues to contract. And number 10, Russia. Even though the price of oil has crashed, Russia is actually doing better than almost everyone else on this list. Russian stocks have fallen by about 10% so far, and if the price of oil stays low, this low, the Russian financial system will continue to suffer. The information offered by Durden in this article comes predominantly from a more three-dimensional perspective relative to the current financial paradigm, and Durden does not yet seem to be connecting the dots of how the geopolitical crises, the price of oil, the decline of the US dollar as global reserve, the BRICS alliance, the BRICS Bank, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank in China, the new CIPS international money transfer system from China, and the stockpiling of gold by many countries, especially China and Russia, are truly connected. I want to emphasize once again how important it is to stay grounded and not react to news like this. Change has to happen, and it is going to happen, and in fact, it already is happening. Whether this change is positive or negative will depend upon how informed people become and the choices that they choose to make in the coming moments of now. The world has experienced changes from one global reserve currency to another in the past. Granted, the circumstances are different and arguably more extensive this time around, given the rampant corruption that has infiltrated almost every aspect of our current global society. Humanity, however, has the potential to endure and see through the change and help co-create something better. Sources are telling us that there are influential people working to implement such positive change, and even if one cannot contribute in a concrete way, staying grounded and holding the energy for life-honoring change has its own benefits, individually and collectively. In general news, I mentioned at the beginning of the newscast that things would be a little different this week. The internet has been full of information, claims, speculation, and perhaps even some truth also. Back in late 2012, as many will remember, things appeared to be going really well. Many were getting psyched up for some kind of grand event said to unfold on December 21st. For the vast majority of people who were entertaining certain expectations of this date and its alleged significance, many felt let down because things did not unfold the way that others told them it was going to unfold. So far, the month of September 2015 has been pretty much similar to the month of December 2012. There has been a lot of hype and a lot of speculation, but there are still numerous events that are stirring up emotions and confusion as people come to grips with challenges and changes, apparently taking place at both a deeper microenergetic level within us, but also in a larger macrocosmic level beyond us and Earth. Just because something significant and something physical did not occur the way that certain people may have been expecting, does not necessarily mean that something did not happen at all. Yet, here we are again, with different sources speaking of significant energetic shifts, and even throwing around the term ascension, as though they are somehow fully aware of what this term means on a mass scale. If there were any lessons that we should have learned from the events of 2012, those lessons may be these. Number 1, despite how awake and aware one might think one is, or how much one might think one knows, there is no one who has a full and complete understanding of all that is unfolding during this time and why. One may have parts of it, and others may even have significant parts of the understanding, but there are very few, and it might even be argued that there is no physical human who has yet been granted access to the full understanding of what it is that is happening, what it is that we are a part of, and why we are experiencing it. Number 2, one cannot continue to look to others for their interpretations as a basis for the creation of one's own reality. One may lazily look to another and use another's interpretation as an excuse, so that when something does not happen or materialize, as has been said, one can blame this other person, without accepting any personal responsibility for the event happening or not happening. If 2012 taught people anything, it was that each human must take a more active, more direct, and more personal role in the co-creation of a new reality. Number 3, each individual is responsible for what he or she creates and experiences in his or her own world. There is no longer a way around this. Science has confirmed that everything is energy, that we are energy, and that energy acts and interacts with energies around it. This energy can carry a positive or negative charge. Each human is now being forced to take responsibility for these choices on both a personal and collective level. Countless sources have offered their interpretations, definitions, meanings, and so on. At the end of the day, the disappointments that we all have felt with journalists, politicians, bankers, lawyers, channelers, religious leaders, and corporate leaders are all pointing humanity in the same direction and are reinforcing the same message. The answers do not lie within anyone else, external from you. All of their actions are designed to point you in the direction of where one's own true answers lie, and that is ultimately within oneself. I'd like to devote some time to this issue of the so-called wave-X energies that are apparently impacting Earth at this time, and, depending upon the source, are alleged to do one of a number of things. What it is likely not going to do, however, is manifest the outcome in exactly the way, shape, or form that each of you are choosing to expect or want it to. The reason I believe I can say this is because most of humanity has not yet been willing to release all its fears and all its attachments related to everything that we have been taught that separates us: race, religion, culture, gender, orientation, physical, mental ability, age, political belief, and so many others. Those of you who researched December 21st or who have researched wave-X or any other energies allegedly impacting Earth at this time have formulated your own expectation or hope of what you want it to mean based on those filters of separation, as opposed to merely stepping back, focusing on a goal that is for the highest good of humanity and our planet, and then just letting the wave do its work. People are choosing fear that the media is putting out, even in the midst of claiming to believe in a wave of energy that will somehow magically transform everything. It will not transform everything, but it does have the potential to transform each individual that chooses this. If one allows oneself to be transformed, one is then empowered to be the example, be the change that one wants to see in the world. If this were to happen on a mass scale, then it is conceivably possible that the world could change in a very short period of time. This is becoming increasingly more important, and why I am choosing to devote some extra time to this, given that we are now within this period of alleged change. A somewhat interesting synchronicity occurred this week that I will elaborate on in a few moments. However, Patricia Cota-Robles, through her Era of Peace organization, has released an article relating to this wave and has shared what can be expected from the recent eclipse, the equinox, and Wave X. Cota-Robles writes the following: "The Company of Heaven has revealed that shifts of energy, vibration, and consciousness unparalleled in the history of time have occurred since the birth of the new Earth in December of 2012. However, they are affirming now that those accomplishments will pale in comparison to the shifts we will experience in the month of September 2015. On September 22nd to 23rd on 2015, which is the September equinox, we will intensify the influx of light from the new moon solar eclipse, which occurred on September 12th, 13th, and secure it into the core of purity in every atomic and subatomic particle and wave of life on Earth. The effects of that activity of light will build in momentum until September 27th, 28th, when we will experience not only an incredibly powerful influx of light from a total full moon lunar eclipse, but a life-transforming influx of light from a celestial event referred to as Wave X, or the event horizon. On September 28th, we will receive a crescendo of gamma-ray light from the galactic core. This is a rhythmic pulsation of light that blesses our solar system every 3,600 years with the divine intent of raising the consciousness of sons and daughters of God and accelerating the evolution of our solar system. Gamma-ray bursts are not well understood by astronomers, but they realize that they are very important because they are the most powerful explosions in the universe. These bursts release more energy in 10 seconds than Earth's sun will release during its entire expected lifespan of 10 billion years. The beings of light have revealed that gamma rays are instrumental in recalibrating humanity's DNA structures. Now that humanity's fragmented double helix DNA has been restored in the realms of cause to the 12 strands we originally had and recalibrated to the frequencies of fifth-dimensional crystalline solar light, we are ready for the monumental events that will take place this month. Now we are being told from on high that these events will catapult the Earth and all life evolving upon her into the highest frequencies of the new Earth we have ever experienced. The anticipated influx of gamma rays we will receive from Wave X will shift humanity's DNA in ways that will result in the most profound awakening and return to Christ consciousness that has ever been attempted in any system of worlds. Up until now, humanity has not been in a sufficient vibration level to adequately receive the gamma rays that are now said to be coming to Earth. Cota-Robles continues, "The Company of Heaven has confirmed that with the miraculous changes that have taken place at an atomic cellular level within humanity and all life on Earth since the birth of the new Earth, humanity is finally able to receive and assimilate these powerful gamma rays from the galactic core. For several weeks, the effects of these gamma rays have been gradually building in momentum. This influx of gamma rays will reach their peak in the midst of a total full moon lunar eclipse. The influx of light from the full moon eclipse will stabilize the water element, which composes 80% of the entire elemental kingdom and sustains the emotional bodies of humanity. Due to the life-transforming activities of light that have been successfully accomplished through the unified efforts of millions of light workers around the world, the earth and all her life are now on the brink of a miraculous transfiguration. Now, some listeners may recall that it was gamma radiation that affected the transformation of Dr. Bruce Banner, who became the Incredible Hulk. The Hulk was created by Stan Lee, who has been releasing movies based on Marvel's comics characters that seem to be exposing more and more of the global cabal. Stan Lee may have had some inside knowledge of the power that gamma radiation could have. The cabal is trying to use the energy to amplify anger, fear, and violence, but humanity could choose otherwise through conscious awareness and intent. In a recent synchronistic connection, Will Berlinghoff and his partner Callista felt called to reach out to me. Will receives information from a source he identifies as Cosmic Awareness. Although he has been relatively silent over the last few years, he has been prodded to step out at this time and was guided to me through Callista. The source, Cosmic Awareness, shared the following information through Will Berlinghoff.
And what this awareness sees is that it is time for change. That this entirety of the human experience over the last several 100,000 years is one where it has been an experiment in consciousness that has involved those who are given power that are not necessarily connected to spirit source, and that they do not have the heart and the compassion that is needed to bring humanity to a level of heightened awareness and comprehension and being. That these ones, such as the reptilian, actually have a very regimented hierarchical structure that is not about creative efforts, but more towards destructive efforts. That these ones have had political, economic, social, religious control for many thousands of years, and in particular the last 10,000 years, which is called modern history or modern historical times. But this experiment is coming to a conclusion, that it was never meant to be a permanent, perpetual, eternal action, but only one that would play out certain roles, if you will, in consciousness, in the creation of consciousness and the experience of consciousness, but that it has come to conclusion. It is done. This by that which is what this awareness describes as divine source consciousness. It is the Almighty. It is all that is. It is that which is the Godhead, the God force. There are many, many labels one could apply, many names one could use. But this source of the everything, of the all, this divine source consciousness, has brought this experiment to completion. All that is happening is that the old is starting to come apart, is starting to collapse. This wave of energy is one of many. The first that happened being on December 21st, 2012, where the door was kicked in and divine source, spirit source, began to bring forth a shifting in consciousness. This wave is rolling in. It is coming from the central sun, but it is also coming from beyond. It is coming from source itself. It has had to go through certain gateways to download into this universe the absolute power of divine source. And it has been coming through a corridor, along a corridor, approaching the planet for the purpose of bringing humanity and Mother Earth herself to a new level of conscious awareness and understanding. that this is an energy that those in power, the cabal, the powers that be, the powers that soon were, has understood and has tried to prevent, even directing the CERN-Hadron Collider energy towards this. But this failed because it is not authorized. It will not be supported. This plan, this deception of the ones in power for so long is at an end. And thus this wave of consciousness that is coming and that is close, that is already affecting the planet and the many on the planet, is to help shift those who are ready to begin to awaken. It is about awakening. It is about sweeping away the energies of those with corruption that have so long been in control. It will not be the all and the everything when this comes to this climax, for there are other waves that are coming in the next 15 months and even in the years beyond. But it is a very powerful and important point at this time, which is designed to help those who are ready and willing and awaiting the shift in consciousness to do this and to be participant in it. And it is a matter of choice. But the choice is such that if one holds that positiveness within and seeks the deeper, higher nature of their own spirit, that they will have a true direct experience of this wave, that which is called by some Wave X.
When asked about the role of our galactic families in the events that are unfolding, Cosmic Awareness offered this information.
There are many galactic ones who are around the Earth at this time, but that they are still waiting. This in particular to that which this awareness calls the Galactic Federation. Not the Galactic Federation of Light, but simply the Galactic Federation. Enlightened beings from the 12 planets that have hosted human life, that are here to assist humanity at this very crucial time. But that they are also waiting for this event to play itself out, this event of the energy wave of consciousness that is sweeping through the planet, that is building to climax. And after this, they may become even more active as the shift that is anticipated because of the way of energy of consciousness, that it will make it easier for them. Also, there is that which is an understanding that they are not to intrude in humanity's affairs until it has reached a certain level. That in the series Star Trek, this was of course referred to as the Prime Directive, and this does exist in the Galactic Federation, that there is an understanding that simply to impose their will would not be of the greatest assistance to the spiritual evolution of humanity itself. But it is here to assist, and it is simply waiting, and has been desperately waiting for humanity to reach a certain level, their presence known, and in an even more concrete way. This is anticipated and seen by this awareness.
Ron Head, in receiving a message from what he calls the Council, shares the following. Your emotion is indeed a driving force that cannot be overestimated. It is a high vibration to be in, but placing it on things that are little more than wishful thinking, based upon things that are not in alignment with universal law, will always lead to your disappointment and a sudden lowering of your vibration. We are saying that their manifestation will always depend upon the vibrational signature of the individual or the collective consciousness involved. If you are considering the manifestations that occur for an individual, then the primary thing that must be considered is the individual's frequency. And more individuals have, are, and will be continuing to experience great leaps in their consciousness states and abilities as the energies around your planet rise higher and higher. Many are having what you term Kundalini experiences, amazing changes in their dream states. visitations to and from other dimensions, and so forth. You are further along than you think you know. You have made amazing progress over the last few decades. So we urge you to bring your focus back to its most powerful place, here, and its most powerful time, now. You are here, it is now, and this is where the work can be done. I will make my contribution here and now. I will do what I must do to raise my vibration now. At the last minute, I came across another source, Jocelyn Dare, who spoke about what was going on with CERN and the Hadron Collider and what the global cabal was attempting to do. More importantly, however, she shares a bit of her research on information relating to not just 2012, but also what is unfolding at this time. Part of her explanation is offered now in the hopes that it will offer something meaningful for perhaps those who may not choose to accept information from channeled sources.
This thing that everybody's heard of that correlates with December 2012, the 21st. And everyone thought that this was a prediction for the end of the world. Same thing. We heard about, a comet smacking into the Earth, Nibiru, the planet showing up, a cataclysmic event of apocalyptic proportions. But nothing seemingly happened other than a huge shift in consciousness. And when I started doing research on this, what I found is that on this calendar, which was found, it's a stone template that was found, a circular disc. And in this disc had all of these hieroglyphs. On these hieroglyphs, it basically outlined what looked to be different cycles within our known universe. And Nassim Haramein has made a fantastic theory around what this calendar actually means, along with one of the elders from Mexico himself, who says that the calendar never indicated destruction or imminent doom on our planet, but rather a shift of consciousness of epic proportion that we have never seen before. So what Nassim Haramein says from talking to these elders and looking at the information that they've given us is he thinks that actually the Mayans were picking up on shifts in our sun's solar core. So every 30 to 60 million years, we cross this galactic equator. And what does that mean? So at the center of this black hole core spits out all of this galactic cosmic radiation, these gamma rays that come from the center. And it creates this kind of amplified energy that shoots through this galactic, spinning universe that we're a part of. And every 30 to 60 million years, like I said, we cross this equator. And what he says is that when our sun hits this equator, it becomes more active. And we've already seen from 2012, which was marked and on, that our sun has become more active, that is changing its cycles. So in this science that Nassim has been looking into about these solar cycles, he's also found that the sun's surface has these streams and black holes that take this ejection from the sun and suck it into its core. So it's like a fractalized piece of the whole that's going on, and it's an indication that his theory might be on point. And even Stephen Hawking, again, is conclusively coming to the same point that Nassim said, that these black holes could be portals, first of all, and not only that, but they are the center of this pulling action that organizes the galactic spin within the entirety of the universe. These cosmic energies that are being emitted, there's this other guy. His name is Dr. Simon Adkins. You can look him up. And he has been studying the Earth's electromagnetic field. Not only our electromagnetic field, but the fields within our cosmos and within the universe. He's been noticing some pretty interesting things. He was hired by the United States government to find the safest areas to live, the places where there were the lowest amount of natural disasters or things like correlating within our Earth's atmosphere that could create destruction. And what he found was that there were centers on the Earth, nodule points that were completely void and absent of any natural disasters. And when he started doing this, he noticed that there were certain electromagnetic frequencies that come from these areas. And not only does the Earth emit these frequencies, but so do our bodies, and that's what's very interesting as well. In the grander scheme of things, he's been studying the cosmos and how the cosmos has been changing with these different fields of radiation. And what he's been seeing and what he predicts is that our sun has been ramping up so much to match these theories of these other scientists that soon, and he's speculating around the end of September, September 25th to the 28th, that there is going to be a mass ejection and change from our sun. Could it be that we're hitting that galactic belt and it's ramping up the energies of the sun, just like Nassim says? Simon Adkins is saying that we are going to get hit with a wave X proportional gamma ray from our sun. And this coincides, again, so exciting, with Bruce Lipton's work about spontaneous evolution. Now, when you look at the DNA structure, right now, the way that they can splice genes is a couple of ways, but the most prominent way is, one, they use enzymes. They use enzymes to cut into the DNA to mutate what they need to and kind of create these scientific projects to study DNA. The second one is called allele frequency. And what they do is they use certain sound waves and certain radiation to cut and splice these DNA structures to create what they want. And scientists have been speculating that evolution takes these quantum leaps, but they don't know how it happens. And what they've been coming to recently, which is such a new theory, is that we may be evolving from the ejections of the sun and within cosmic energy and radiation within our known universe. And what's exciting is that there are a couple people that are saying that this is going to happen at the end of September. Now, am I saying that we're going to quantum leap to be able to read minds, to be able to, you know, do whatever we want intuitively, to take this next leap in consciousness and expansion into this evolution? I'm not really sure. But what I am here to do is give you the information and knowing. And if you look within the universe itself, the fractalized piece of the whole, usually what ends up happening is there is an event point. And then from that, like the merging of male and female to create life, it slowly starts to replicate and expand to something so much greater and miraculous than we ever could have imagined, like the forming of a child within the womb. And maybe right now is that center point, that point of reference that will spontaneously ignite the evolution of humanity as we know it on the earth. And maybe the end of September will just be another month, or seemingly so. But I guess we'll just have to see.
It seems that something is happening, although we have no idea how it will all come out in the laundry. Stay grounded, stay focused, and most importantly, stay within the energies of that which you want to manifest in your world. Avoid attachments to expectations of significant physical changes. This may lead to disappointments. As you change, so too will the world that you experience, but it does require your participation and your love. In disclosure-related news, the London Express has picked up on a story that it believes may offer further proof not only to the existence of life beyond Earth, but also further points to growing abilities within an awakening population as people awaken to their truth and life purpose here on Earth. Jenny Pascal writes in her article on September 21st that on September 19th, back in 1961, Betty and Barney Hill of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, claimed to have been abducted by aliens. Scientists at the time discredited a map drawn by Betty, which outlined the exact location of where she claimed the extraterrestrials originated. Experts claimed there was no constellation similar to the drawing and that it bore no resemblance to any known formation at the time. Now, years later, one statistician has remarkably argued that the unusual alignment of key sun-like stars in the drawing which mirrors the Zeta Reticuli, could never have happened by chance, and that Betty was a victim of an alien abduction. Only now is the story gaining the interest of selected media and individuals. The Hills both recounted in their interviews interacting with humanoid beings who performed varying tests. Betty Hill described one test requiring a needle to be inserted into her navel, but upon experiencing pain, the test was stopped. Betty also remembered a conversation with one she called the leader, and she asked where they came from. A map was provided for her showing the location. The article continues. Under hypnosis, Betty drew the map, which consisted of 12 prominent stars, connected by lines, and 3 lesser ones that formed a distinctive triangle. She said she was told the stars connected by solid lines formed trade routes, whereas dashed lines were to less traveled stars. David Saunders, a statistician who had been on the Condon UFO study, argued that the unusual alignment of key sun-like stars in a plane centered around Zeta Reticuli was statistically improbable to have happened by chance from a random sketch, and that Betty was in fact telling the truth. He claimed that only aliens could have given her the information. Dr. Benjamin Simon discovered that upon placing both Benny and Betty Hill under hypnosis, he found that both were able to fully recall the memories of their experiences. Both later died of health implications, although it was unclear if they were related to the experience. I remind listeners that, just like on Earth, there are good and not so good members of our galactic families. Some have participated in partnership with the global cabal for the control of this planet. Some sources, such as Dr. Stephen Greer and also Sheldon Neidl, have also affirmed this to some degree. If one was to look at all the truth being exposed in the world at this time, and, given the levels of fear that the global cabal seem to be in, as they try desperately to scare people back into giving them their power, it might make one ask what it was that actually changed in the world, that has helped the people to start getting the upper hand against this controlling group. Whether one believes that help is coming from beyond Earth or by some major force upon Earth matters not. Another London news website, The Mirror, has picked up another story, this one involving Edward Snowden. This September 20th article reports that Edward Snowden has claimed that aliens are trying to make contact with Earth right now. The NSA whistleblower was speaking as he continues to live in isolation in Russia following a major leak of information regarding the way government agencies monitor and use our private data. However, he took time on Friday to call into scientist Neil deGrasse Tyson's Star Talk podcast to make some incredible claims. According to Snowden, if you have an alien civilization trying to listen for other civilizations, or our civilization trying to listen for aliens, there's only one small period in the development of their society when all of their communication will be sent via the most primitive and most unprotected means. So when we think about everything that we're hearing through our satellites or everything that they're hearing from our civilization, all of their communications are encrypted by default. So what we are hearing, that's actually an alien television show or, a phone call, is indistinguishable to us from cosmic microwave background radiation. For many, the disclosure of this one truth cannot come quickly enough, and I count myself as being one within this group of humans eagerly awaiting more revelations to come forth. Over to tech news now, and this week, an Australian doctorate student is seeking to upstage NASA in the race for space travel propulsion. According to an article by Vandita on the AnonymousHQ.com website on September 23rd, the article writes that Paddy Newman, a doctorate student at the University of Sydney, has developed a new kind of ion space drive that has smashed NASA's current fuel efficiency record. NASA's High Power Electronic Propulsion, or HIPEP system, allows 9,600 seconds of specific impulse with plus or minus 200 units. The Newman drive has touched 14,690 units plus or minus 2,000. According to Australian newspaper Honi Soit, NASA's HIPEP runs on xenon gas, while the Newman drive can be powered on a number of different metals which produce ions when they are struck by an electric arc. The most efficient tested so far being magnesium. The fact that this drive runs on metals commonly found in space junk means it could potentially be fueled by recycling exhausted satellites, repurposing them into fresh fuel. Unlike current industry-standard chemical propulsion devices, which operate through short, high-powered bursts of thrust and then coasting, Newman's drive runs on a continuous rhythm of short and light bursts, preserving the fuel source but requiring long-term missions, write Johanna Connolly and Peter Walsh from Honi Soit. The writers explain that in NASA's HIPEP system, the xenon gas is given an electrical charge. It is then electrically accelerated to a speed of about 30 kilometers per second. When xenon ions are emitted at high speed, for example, as exhaust from a spacecraft, they push the spacecraft in the opposite direction. The ultimate speed an aircraft can reach using ion thrust depends upon how much propellant it carries. The potential for this new development is significant, given that the cost of shipping fuel into space is super expensive, and yet there is an overabundance of metallic space junk floating up in the atmosphere. The article adds that it could vastly reduce the cost of space transportation, keep satellites in orbit for longer periods of time, and enable space travel of much greater distances, with Newman suggesting the possibility of Mars and back on a tank of fuel. Newman is currently endurance testing the drive, and his findings are due to be presented on September 30th at the 15th Annual Australian Space Research Conference. Finally, in health news, the global cabal has long been using tricks against the people of the world to make them think they are getting something healthy while not getting something healthy at the same time. The food industry is notorious for inserting unknown chemicals and compounds into foods intentionally or unintentionally that are indirectly fueling the profits of big medicine and big pharma. As people have been moving away from drinking milk, for example, the movement has been towards alternative milk-like products such as soy, coconut, cashew, almond milks, and others. An article this week on the Natural News website will not surprise many listeners, but could be news for others. The article reports that commercial almond milk has been exposed as a fake beverage that is thickened with carrageenan instead of almonds. Almond milk is a healthy beverage that is touted by many health advisors for its nutritional benefits. Known since the Middle Ages, almond milk has enjoyed increased popularity in recent years as it has become more widely available. Almond milk is traditionally made from almonds and water. Almond milk and the vast majority of other similar products carry a dark secret, a secret that has been reported on CVN at least once before. The article adds that many commercially available forms of almond milk contain a substance called carrageenan. Carrageenan is made from red seaweed and is added to the almond milk to thicken and to stabilize the liquid. The problems with commercial almond milk, according to the article, are that with sales exceeding $854 million in 2014, almond milk is becoming a standard milk replacement. One of the problems with commercial almond milk is that it contains only 2% almonds. In fact, some of the labels on the commercial varieties list more sweeteners than almonds in the mixture. The labeling laws currently allow companies to use additives instead of the nutritious almonds that consumers expect. For a half gallon of almond milk, about 144 to 192 almonds are needed. However, only 38 to 50 almonds are used per half gallon by both Blue Diamond and Silk almond milk products. Instead of almonds, the product is thickened with carrageenan, which is void of nutrients. The article notes the harmful effects of carrageenan, writing that carrageenan has been shown to cause numerous health problems, especially in the gastrointestinal tract. Research has shown that exposure to carrageenan could cause ulcers in the colon and possibly even contribute to GI cancers. In 1972, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration considered a restriction on dietary carrageenan, but no regulation was put into effect, which means that manufacturers are free to use this product at their discretion. I feel it important to add something here. Science and biology are exceptionally complex and also exceptionally intriguing. For example, to take sodium or chloride separately, they would be dangerous. However, in the right combination, sodium chloride becomes common table salt that we put on our foods. Carrageenan, as a red algae compound, may or may not necessarily be dangerous or beneficial by itself, but taken in combination with more dangerous processed foods or pasteurized liquids, then it may compound and accelerate issues relating to the processed or pasteurized items. The other thing is this, and there will be many who will have a hard time understanding or grasping this concept. Certain individuals who have gained mastery over their bodies and the energetic functions have displayed varying degrees of skills and abilities beyond the general public. One of these abilities is to ingest or eat something that would normally be harmful to others, but it ends up not being harmful to these individuals. I do not offer this information to encourage people to try this, but rather to research it and begin to learn more about the human beings we are now becoming. As we evolve further, we will find that we can energetically influence foods and liquids in ways that may reduce dangers when it is absolutely necessary to do so. And this is a power that has the potential to disrupt attempts by the global cabal and companies like Monsanto to kill off significant numbers of humans via dangerous food production. In this week's final words, I mentioned at the beginning of my newscast that I would share a lesson I have taken away from this past week. I introduced to listeners a source of information that identifies itself merely as cosmic awareness and is not a physical or etheric entity as I understand it. We all have the ability to tap into this awareness, and some may be able to do it more effectively than others. At the end of the day, however, all information that comes contains at least minute interpretations that are biased, because the human most likely has not been fully able to separate one's personal life path filters from the other awareness one has tapped into. This is not a judgment that it is flawed. If anything, it merely validates that information is uniquely different and yet equally beautiful. What one holds as truth in any moment of now may not necessarily be what another holds as truth unless one chooses to accept something as part of his or her truth. It is this that validates why it is becoming so important to use discernment as opposed to blindly accepting something from another just because it may happen to agree with an individual in the current moment. Humans have demonstrated a tendency to move towards any information that makes them comfortable and supports the worldview that one holds in any moment. When introduced to new ideas and concepts, one's truth is gradually being questioned, and each will adapt to the information in a way and in a time that is as different and as beautiful for each soul. We are in an accelerated period of evolutionary growth at this time, and for those who are opening to observe it, there is information coming out on multiple levels that is overwhelming to many people. Some are able to completely jump on board with some information and totally reject other information. Of course, the trick has been to discern which information is being put out by the global cabal to intentionally distract us and keep us in fear, which information is being put out by well-intentioned souls who are not using their discernment, which information is coming from others that are honest and coming from a space of integrity, and then which information one is able to discern within one's self, between one's heart and one's ego. As I have shared with my listeners, I do not want people to blindly accept what I share as truth unless it is meaningful to do so. I would prefer, rather, to share information in the hopes that one will be guided to do one's own research, but more importantly, learn how to begin questioning everything from an observing perspective. Since one does not have the whole picture, it is wise to remain detached from judgment of a situation, an experience, or of another person, because we do not know the purpose or lesson to come from that experience, situation, or individual, unless we are open-minded and open-hearted enough to receive this lesson. Let me be very clear. I make no claims of being perfect in this sense. I have been judgmental of things and of people in the past, and I still come across moments where I do the same today. When this happens, most tend to resist and repress the thoughts, and I also have done this. This is not who I am, I naively tell myself, and then try to reaffirm that I am somehow better than that. In the oneness of the all that is, we have all played roles of good, bad, and perhaps even ugly. That which is coming up within us at this time is coming up to be addressed, acknowledged, released, and healed. We were not necessarily meant to run away and deny the darkness within us, but embrace it and love that part of our being back into full acceptance. If you are one now saying something similar to, "That's easier said than done," I am in wholehearted agreement with you. Gentleness, self-forgiveness, and a lot of self-love is required, and this may take practice, maybe even lots of it. I mentioned earlier that I had learned a bit of a lesson this week. Here is what happened. I have shared in the past some personal feelings with listeners on what I think may be happening behind the scenes and what may be going on with some people. I have also stated a belief that Pope Francis is truly good and trying to collapse the Jesuit order and the bad things happening within the Roman Catholic Church. In my conversation with the source known as Cosmic Awareness, I observed something within me. It seems that Cosmic Awareness was not quite in agreement with me about Obama and Pope Francis. I guess my journalistic ego was hoping that Cosmic Awareness would validate my thoughts so that I could somehow justify myself that I was on track and that I was somehow okay. Of course, at the higher divine level of creation, we are all okay and are each divinely perfect, although perhaps imperfect in physical form. I guess I wanted to be right in my own way of observing the individuals in question. Cosmic Awareness offered perspectives that challenged this. I share this with you for a couple of reasons. One reason is that I feel it important as a journalist attempting to serve with integrity to be able to acknowledge a differing opinion with another and yet being willing to allow it. Maybe I was right, or maybe I was wrong, or maybe I was both right and wrong, but my field of interpretation had not expanded to the point where I was able to see this. How can I share this in a way that I hope you will understand? Many people are quick to judge certain other people as bad. In some cases, it is very clear to see that some people are behaving and acting in ways that are not honorable to life in all its forms. Others hide behind what looks like grand gestures of kindness or service. Many multinational corporations have tried to market themselves in this way when it is clear that they cannot be honorable to humans and the planet when they have shareholders to answer to. It becomes a conflict of interest. Obama has been judged by many as bad. Some, and perhaps many of his choices, could understandably lead one to this conclusion. The same could be said for Canadian Prime Minister Harper, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, UK Prime Minister Cameron, and certainly many others. For me, personally, I felt that Obama is here to do something good, while I could see that other leaders are not making any attempt to do so at all. I had a hope and a faith that Obama was awake and aware of what his role is. The magic of the human experience in 3D form as we evolve is that things rarely appear or manifest exactly in the ways that we think or assume they will evolve. It is not my place to judge this source, cosmic awareness, as wrong, and therefore perhaps as being bad. Let ye who is without sin cast the first stone. I have as much chance as any other of being right or wrong. In this difference of opinion, I had to face the reaction that came up within me. I could have chosen to reject it, and therefore reject the source of the information. This, however, is not really what journalists are supposed to do. I am here as a journalist to not only share, but also to grow along with all of you. It is possible that Obama has truly forgotten who he is, and that he may have allowed himself to become fully controlled by the cabal. It is very possible that Pope Francis is playing his role in a very different, but perhaps very clever way to help fulfill another secret Jesuit agenda. Perhaps all that is unfolding at the UN at this time is, in fact, a last-ditch attempt by the cabal to implement some kind of strategy that will allow it to reclaim its power and control over humanity and our planet. The good news, and this is where Cosmic Awareness and I were in agreement, is that this will not happen, although it does look like it on various levels. As far as Obama is concerned, how is it possible that Cosmic Awareness and I could both be right and at the same time have Obama fulfill his divine destiny? There are those who see him as good and will only try to justify that goal, despite some bad choices. There are those who see him as bad and will only try to justify that goal, despite some good choices. As we expand our awareness beyond the 3D and more into an expanded awareness and consciousness, members of the global cabal, and perhaps arguably also Obama, have been fulfilling the very roles that they needed to fulfill in order for humanity to have the experience that it was claiming to want at that time. The experience of knowing who one is within the collective experience of being that which one is not. Each soul is fulfilling his or her role in the evolutionary shift in human and planetary consciousness at this time. The global cabal knows full well that its time is up, but they are still going to try to create as much fear as possible to extend their realm of control for as long as possible. We have been getting so wound up in wanting to judge others as right, wrong, good, and bad, and this is probably what the global cabal has wanted because it fuels fears of separation. What they do not want are people finding out who they are or connecting to the help that is around them, especially now. Wave X, as Cosmic Awareness stated, has the potential to be good or bad, depending upon how one chooses to receive and use it. The cabal wants you to choose fear at this time, and hence all the panic about refugees, and war rhetoric with Russia once again. The answer is no longer out there. It is within you. Even if you may not exactly feel that the world is moving towards something better, what do you have to lose by focusing on love and positivity while trying to demonstrate as much love and peace in your world that you can? If you want this new world, no one can create it for you, unless you are willing to share your truth and your beingness in helping to co-create this. Create a beautiful week until our next Moment of Now. So that is a sample of the unfolding higher consciousness news around the world this week. Cosmic Vision News is broadcast weekly from the CosmicVisionNews.com website. Links to stories used in this broadcast are published in the show summary, available on the website. CBN can be followed through the CBN Facebook page, Scene page, YouTube channel, as well as on Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey West, reminding you that the peaceful warrior who trusts his or her path does not need to prove another wrong. Until our next Moment of Now, stay grounded in love, hold the vision of light and peace in your hearts, and keep your eyes to the skies, disclosures unfolding all around you. Namaste.